All right, guys, back here on Southeastern 14, and Max Barr with me once again as we are getting into our SEC basketball center rankings. So this will officially wrap up our position rankings entering the 23-24 season. Check out the point guard, combo guard, wing, and power forwards. We've done all four of those already. And now, Max, we get to the centers. And sometimes they say you save the best for last in terms of depth and everything, but I'm not going to knock the centers. But here's why I say that jokingly is because we know, and we've said it many times throughout these rankings, is it's the era of positionless basketball, and you just don't have a lot of just true traditional center types. And in all honesty, let's be honest, like there are some guys that are going to be on this list that are listed as forwards, like they're listed as power forwards by their teams and whatever. But we kind of know they're probably going to play more of that. You know, they're probably the biggest guy on the floor, and they're going to play that center role. So you just have to keep that in mind when we talk about the centers. Again, we talk about depth, but numbers wise, there's not as many of these guys that are available in the SEC because, again, I think a lot of people are playing, power forward, stretch for we talked about that, right? So keep that in mind as we go through this list. Some of the production numbers are not going to rival probably the top 5 production numbers of any other position group. So that is at least something I think, Max, that's worth saying up front because as we'll see, I think you and I have a very clear 1-2, a top 2, and then quite honestly could be 1A, 1B. Then after that, you start to get into guys, and then maybe beyond number 3, where you're really looking, to see kind of that next step for some of these guys. And so I think it'll be interesting to go through this list here.
Yeah, a lot of these rankings are going to be based on kind of potential and trying to predict a guy taking that next jump other than the top 2, maybe 3. It's just not as deep as a position group, like you said. A lot of these guys they'll do a lot for the team, but they don't do a lot of production stuff for the team. If we just want to jump right into the rankings here, I can start
Sure.
off with number 5 with a guy that does a lot for his team, but doesn't put up a ton of numbers, and that's Julius Marble for Texas A&M. If you watch Texas A&M on offense, Marble's always moving. He's a constant screener. Him and Wade Taylor have a great chemistry, if you want to call it a 2-man game, I guess you can call it that. But Marble's a great rim runner. He runs the floor a lot. He gets that deep post position. He's not going to block shots on defense. He's not going to deter a lot of shots, even like that. He's going to be stout and hold position. He had 10-4 in SEC play, but only 14 blocks whole year. I would like him to be a little bit more of a defensive presence. When he played some good rebounders, he kind of just gets swallowed out. One game against Shibwe had 1 rebound whole game. It's like, come on, we gotta add a little bit more. But he did have multiple 21-9 games where he just kind of he finds his rhythm and they just keep dumping it down to him and he gets going. So a little bit up and down, but there's really not a ton you can't like about Julius Marble. He's an older guy. It's one of these things where if you're not going to have a ton of production, what do you want from that center group? Well, I would like a veteran guy that's not going to get into a ton of early foul trouble and stuff. And Julius Marble's a solid guy that can fill that role for Texas A&M.
I'm a big Julius Marble guy. We talked about this last year if you were watching our stuff throughout the season. I said, look, there was I think a stretch where he had 6 games in a row in SEC play early on. This is when A&M was hot early on. What did they start? What was it, 5-0, I think, in the league? Then they lost that game at Kentucky. But
Yep.
he had 6 straight games where he scored in double figures. Someone that could rebound, like you said, maybe not blocking a lot of shots, but I think in the amount of minutes that he played, which he was not someone that played necessarily a ton of minutes, right? Only averaged 21 minutes a game last season. Yeah, I thought he was very effective in those minutes. And, like other big men, sure, there were some games where he just were not as effective. And like you said, going up against different guys, that can be a challenge. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with him. I would probably I could probably put him as high as 4 on my list. I think again, yeah, he's a big part of the reason why, and I think it was Rothstein, I think had A&M at 1 in his SEC rankings heading into the season. So I think Marble will be a reason for that. Wade Taylor's going to get the most attention, and we've talked about other guys as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that just having him doing kind of the role that he's in, I think it's a big addition for A&M moving forward now, because again, we've seen him do it now. This past season, he really just took a bit of a jump, and so we knew the potential was there, right, coming over from Michigan State, and so yeah, I think Julius Marble definitely belongs in the top 5 somewhere. So, all right, Max, to number 4 on your list, and I think this is where try to make my guess on what you're going to have here.
I think we're
My
about to
guess
sync up
is,
here for the next 4. I think we
yeah,
might.
I think so too. I think you're going to go Makhi Mitchell at Arkansas.
We are.
Yeah, which makes sense because, I mean, again, he's someone else that I don't want to say he's the same as Marble, but when you look at the minutes, right, he also played about 20 minutes a game, came in and did a lot of different things for them. And, now that both Mitchells are not there, you've just got one, sure, I think that it opens up some opportunity. And I think on this team specifically, and you may have did the numbers on this, I'm pretty sure it was you, Arkansas is the most experienced, right, of any team
Yep.
in the SEC coming into the season.
Yep.
And you put that on Twitter or on X, whatever you want to call it these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's another, I thought getting him back, like you said in the lead in, maybe not a guy that's going to put up, 15 a game and 10 rebounds a game or anything, but he gives you what you need to complement everything else that you have on the roster. And I think that's important for a guy like this that has size. So I think the experience of Makhi Mitchell very important for this Arkansas team.
Yeah, and actually, up until about an hour or two ago, I had Jonas Adu as my 4, and I had Makhi Mitchell on the outside. But I switched that. I didn't. This was not under. This was a little bit under the radar for me, but Makhi Mitchell had more blocks last year than Jonas Adu.
Yeah.
I think of Adu as like one of the better rim protectors. Every time he's on the floor and he's guarding that paint, you're like, geez, how are they gonna score over this guy? And he alters a lot of shots too, does Adu, but so does Makhi Mitchell, and he does not get enough credit for what he does on defense for this Arkansas team. I mean, he only didn't start, I think, like 3 or 4 games. Started every other game for Arkansas. 21 minutes per game. I mean, he puts up 6 points, 6 rebounds, almost 2 blocks a game. I mean, that's solid. That's real solid when you look at the numbers that a bunch of these other guys are putting up, where a lot of it looks like it's like 5 and 5, stuff like that. And you add 2 blocks a game from Mitchell, and that's big. I mean, you look at this Arkansas team this year, and if you're going to have Mitchell and Brazil on the court at the same time, that's 2 guys that are going to probably average over a block a game. It's going to be tough sledding down in the paint. Yeah, I think Makhi Mitchell is going to be good. Second year in the SEC now, also, so he's going to be a little bit more comfortable. I like Makhi.
Yeah, I mean, look, in that Arkansas team, you got Mitchell at 6'10", you got Graham at 6'10", Fall at 6'10", Brazil at 6'10". I mean, and these are all guys that are going to play minutes, like I would expect in some form or fashion. So I think just look at it from that standpoint. And again, I think having a fifth-year senior type guy like this is nice to have, and I think it showcases the depth on this Arkansas roster, which is why you and I are as high on them as we are. It's because it does feel like they're 10 deep, at worst, like they're 10 deep. So that's kind of what it feels like in terms of just the options they have available. So yeah, I like that one too. Adu is, and I'll go ahead and bring him up here too, because I think he's one that just as easily could be, again, in your top 5. I'd probably have him.
Separation.
Yeah, like there's just not a lot. I think between Adu, Mitchell, and maybe you put Marble into that category as well. Though, like I said, I'm not afraid to bump Marble up a little bit. But I think we saw it with Adu. I think you could very clearly see, you saw his minutes. He was an important part of this Tennessee team last year. And even though the numbers weren't there from a scoring standpoint, sometimes you just look at guys, you immediately, all right, do the numbers just jump out? His numbers aren't just going to completely jump out at you just from a scoring standpoint and all that. But he can rebound. He's got the size. He is kind of one of those guys where I can't imagine him playing any other position other than center, which, again, we don't have a lot of those guys. So, yeah, I think Adu, like we said, there's not a lot of separation. If you want to go a top 6, put Adu, Marble, maybe Mitchell in some order that you like. I'd have no issue with any order probably in that. But, yeah, I think Adu certainly belongs in the conversation, if not number 4, number 5, whatever you want to put him, because I do think that, like we said, very high on Tennessee, and that starting 5 for Tennessee could be pretty outstanding, especially once Ziegler returns, and you would figure that Adu is going to be in there somewhere. even though he started, a stretch of games last year late in SEC play. So yeah, I like Jonas Adu heading into the season. So
well, we talk about a lot finishing the year strong, and Jonas Aidoo played 20 plus minutes in all of those tournament games down the stretch. So I definitely expect him to bump up in minutes average, probably 25-ish minutes a game. There's no more Plavšić, no more Kamwa. So definitely a bump here from Aidoo.
Yeah. He benefited too. I guess now that I think about it, I'm sure he played when they were dealing with some injuries there. I think that's where you saw the opportunity become more available, because we know that Tennessee team had a lot of injuries and they were mixing up different lineups and such. So yeah, I think that'll aid him too heading into the season. So all right, number 3, Max.
All right, so next up we have got Moussa Cisse.
Your favorite name to say.
Yeah, well, actually, funny little sidebar here. A few years ago, Moussa Diabate was playing for Michigan, and every time he scored, the Michigan PA announcer would go, Moussa Diabate. And anytime someone has Moussa, I run with that.
That's free, folks, right here on YouTube. You get that for free right there.
So I'm all on the Moussa Cisse train, praying that he gets his waiver, because if he does, he is going to be a problem for Ole Miss. He was the best interior defender in the nation last year. I don't think that's deniable. He has been back-to-back Big 12 first-team defense. Last year was co-defensive player of the year. We've been talking about how the Big 12 was the best conference in basketball last year. He was the best defender in the best conference. So, I mean, other than that, I don't even think I need to make more of a case for Moussa Cisse. He's gonna rebound the heck out of the ball. Also, had multiple games in double-digit rebounds. He's not going to be the biggest offensive threat. He's a lob threat. He can play with his back to the basket, but he is a stud defender, and there's not really anybody better than him in the country.
I mean, can we just group these two guys in together with Moussa Cisse and Jamarion Sharp and just talk about right? Like we've said, and we did that. We kind of cheated with Kentucky with Edwards and Trey Mitchell. But I mean, here's the thing, right? And I think you can pick either one of these guys and just sort of talk about, these are two guys, and we talked about them. They're true centers. Like they are true centers in every sense of the word, because you look at the size they have, 171, 175 or whatever. Sharp 7'5", of course. And I mean, I think that's why, and people rolled their eyes a little bit when we had Ole Miss pretty high. And we're going to do our official preseason power rankings here in the next couple of weeks, probably. And we'll see where we wind up putting Ole Miss, if we have them maybe lower than we did initially. But if you're wondering why, it's because if you have two guys like this, and again, we don't know, we'll see who is available, who's not, waiver standpoint. But, you got a former Big 12 defensive player of the year, like we said, in Cisse. You've got Sharp, who is just, humongous and can obviously
blocks.
Yes, I mean 4.1 blocks per game. 4.1 blocks per game. And remember, the year before, 4.6 blocks per game. So, I mean, these guys, I think you have to put as kind of a package deal. But even them as a package deal, Max, which is going to be significant if they're both available for Ole Miss this season, even them as a package deal, not enough to put them into the top 2, because there is a very clear top 2, in my opinion. I'm curious what order you're going to have these two in, because I really went back and forth on this quite a bit, because I think they're both SEC Player of the Year candidates heading into the season. But we are down to 2 and 1, and let's just call it what it is. We're just going to find out what order we're going to put Tolu Smith and Johni Broome in, because they are clearly the top 2 centers in the league heading into the season.
This was a tough one. This was a tough one. And if you break it down, I can break it down in 2 ways. I can break it down in who was the better player last year, who deserves it coming off of last season, or who do I predict to have the better year this year? It's 2 different answers. Last year, Tolu Smith was first team All-SEC. Johni Broome was second team. This year, I think it's going to be flipped, just because of the team build and what they're going to ask out of these players.
Yep.
Mississippi State kind of bulked up their front court, added Jimmy Bell. He's good. They have Keyshawn Murphy, who's poised for breakout. Guy Chol, 7-foot freshman. Like, they have a lot of guys that can take the pressure off of Tolu Smith. Auburn, not so much. They do have Dylan Cardwell, but they had him last year as well. And other than that, there's really there's not a lot of front court depth there for Auburn. I think Johni Broome is going to be the centerpiece of this entire team, both offensively and defensively. He's the type of guy that can contend for Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. I'm not sure if Tolu falls into that category, and just because of that, the versatility, the team need, what they're going to be using him for, I bumped Johni Broome above Tolu Smith. But I mean, this is a true 1A, 1B here. These two guys are elite.
All right. Well, since you put Broome at 1, I'll put Smith at 1, and that way
There we go.
we both get, because you're right. I mean, there's not a lot to me that separates these two guys. Like I said,
so good.
You could put these two guys in there with, I don't want to say this because I'm going to forget somebody, but I would assume like a Wade Taylor is probably the other guy that'll have SEC Player of the Year favorite heading into the season.
Yep.
But I think these two guys probably 1, 2, 3, unless you want to, like I said, maybe go out on a Justin Edwards or someone like that. But or one of the Tennessee guys. That's also a possibility, but Vescovy would probably lead the way there. But yeah, I mean, he's right. These two are right there in the conversation. They're two of the top 5 players in the league. I don't think there's any question about that. And yeah, just based on, like you said, you look at the numbers, and there's not a lot to be disappointed about when it comes to these two guys, and both will be significant parts of their team's success. The most significant, probably, player on each their respective teams. And so, I think that it's fine. Whatever order you want to put them in, go for it. These two are two of the best players in the league, like we said, not just centers, two of the best players out there. These two lead the way in this center group here, Max, which we went through quite a bit quicker than we did the other ones. But again, there's kind of a reason for that, because I think it's these two guys, and I don't want to say everyone else in a derogatory way, but like these two are that good to where it supports them being in the top. All right, let's quickly run through just any other guys you kind of had on your radar there at this center position.
Yeah, I had 2 guys that I had a hard time leaving out, and I really wanted to mention because I think they are solid and they're going to be in for a nice year. First one is Josh Gray with South Carolina. He just fell through the cracks last year. Didn't get talked about a lot. They had the G.G. Jackson, fiasco that happened and everything, and Josh Gray, slowly but surely throughout the year, just started getting more minutes, more production, and he was a beast on the boards. He was a beast. If you go to any, statistics site you want to use to see rebounding in the SEC last year, you'll see guys 30 minutes a game, 25 minutes a game, 28 minutes a game. Then there's 16. Who's that guy with 16 minutes a game that's top 15 in the conference in rebounding? It's Josh Gray. He only had like 17 minutes a game last year and averaged like 8 rebounds. He was a beast on the boards. Doesn't add much offensively, but he could take that jump, and we could see him putting up like, an 8 and 8 or like an 8 and 9 type of year, and be like, whoa, this guy really took a nice jump. So yeah, I think Josh Gray is definitely worth noting. Did you have any comment you wanted to make on Gray?
No, I'm curious who else you said you had another guy. I'm curious. Yep. There's one of 2 that I'm thinking of, and I'm trying to figure out who it's going to be.
Yeah, this other one, you definitely know who one of them is, but it's Micah Handlogten, coming in from Marshall. The only reason I didn't have him in the top 5 was because he's doing that jump up from a lower level, and you don't know exactly how it's going to translate, but his numbers are great. And for in a conference where we don't have a lot of big men putting up big numbers and stuff, this guy puts up numbers. He was 17th in the nation in rebounds last year. Got a great block rate. If he translates at all, 75% of his production, if he comes over, he's going to put up some numbers. He's going to be a menace in the paint, very tall. So yeah, I think Handlogten and Josh Gray, 2 guys that can kind of take a jump and really make an impact here.
All right, 2 other guys to throw in the mix here, because, well, actually, I'm going to say 3. Kentucky fans, we listed Aaron Bradshaw in the power forward range. We kind of cheated. We put him and Trey Mitchell and said, whoever you want to put as power forward, you can. Whoever you want to put the center. So take your pick. So that's why they're not in there if you didn't watch the power forward video. Bayfall, Arkansas, also listed as a forward.
Yes.
by them. So he's not listed traditionally as a center. So like if you're wondering about that one, we would probably put him, I guess, in the power forward department, because it's like, again, you're trying to figure out exactly where to put these guys. And then Connor Vanover at Missouri, who,
Yes.
speaking of Arkansas, comes back in for the second time in the SEC, joins Missouri. I think I'm very curious to see kind of how he blends into the mix after leaving the SEC. First go around, goes out to Oral Roberts, plays well there, and now comes back. What is he, how's his game evolved in terms of how it translates to the SEC? I'm very curious to see how Missouri uses him heading into the season. So there you go, Max. That is some thoughts on the centers in the SEC. As we said, this wraps up our position rankings for the 23-24 season. Check out a point guards, shooting guards, or combo guards, wings, power forwards, centers, everybody. They're all there. And if we left someone out, again, it's not easy in positionless basketball to try to figure out where to group everyone. But
one more guy.
One more.
Will Baker's coming in from Nevada.
Ah, yes.
Mountain West third team selection last year. He averaged 15 and 5 in Mountain West play. So, and that's going against some good defenses, some games against Nate Mensa and stuff like that. So, not sure if those numbers will translate exactly, but Will Baker's definitely going to give LSU some offensive punch in the front court there.
Yep, that is for sure. So be sure to again check out all the other stuff. We've had a lot of thoughts on LSU too coming into the season. So check that out on the channel. Hit that subscribe button for all of our SEC football stuff. It is officially the start of college football season this week. Week 0 gets going. Check out all of our preview stuff there, and again, check out all of our off-season basketball stuff. And we really start cranking up our basketball stuff from here as we start doing our team previews and preseason power rankings, all that here soon. So hit that subscribe button. We appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 14.